Hey everyone. Hi.
Hi everyone.
Hiya.
It's great to meet you all and thank you all for coming to the
Yeah.
screen. I hope you enjoyed the films. So we have you, Jahid, here and Russell Adam Morton. And yeah, I'm just going to ask you a few questions. Move this so you can see a little better. Okay, so the first thing is I think all of the films that were in the screening are exploring spirituality and ritual, and as well as this kind of engagement with colonialism as well. They both kind of have this an engagement with this kinds of things. So I wondered if you could both speak to that. Russell, do you want to go first?
Oh, Kathy. This is Daniela.
Hi.
She's the costume designer
Wow.
for the film. You can,
Russell is Eurasian, and the Eurasians in Singapore and Malaysia have a very intertwined relationship with colonialism because of the Europeans marrying into the culture, and so it's become such an intertwined relationship. And I think the spirituality that it talks about it also comes from the religious nature of how Catholicism was the main thing that kept the culture together, right?
yeah. Okay, let me think about this one. I think Judah, you can go first. Yeah.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Judhajit. In India, I mean, there's so many culture and so many languages that it's very difficult to have an unified idea of Indian spirituality. But to make it short, there's a sense of a cyclical time in our culture. There's a sense of everything coexisting together. And so in that way, we are never disconnected from the past. In that way, we have a very strong similarity with ancient African culture, where the ancestor spirits are always there with us. But the thing is that this kind of spirituality often gets misinterpreted as superstition, which is not. So what I tried a little bit in my film is trying to explore the idea of time that our tribal people of our country has, and they're still connected to that, that primordial sense of belonging together as human beings. So there's a strong sense of fraternity in our culture, which is getting appropriated and misinterpreted by the current Hindutva regime, and they're trying to misinterpret our religious texts in big ways. So I wanted to make this film from the point of view of someone who is trying to identify a past that is getting appropriated, changed, and colored to suit own political needs in the current times.
Thank you for that. Russell, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to add to the end of that?
Yeah, maybe I can compare it to one of the scenes in the film where I talk about the orang minyak, which is the oily man folklore, and these were stories that were first owned by the Malay community in Singapore, and I think Eurasians being a new culture, what they do was they picked up different habits and rituals. They didn't have an identity of their own. So what we did was we created our own by sort of absorbing whatever was around us, and so their cultures, their folklores, their rituals became ours, which I also thought was sort of a nice sort of like comparison to what actually ghosts also are like. Ghosts are like sort of specters and spirits that assimilate, they copy, they become something new. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And maybe I should ask you as well about the costume seeing as you're here, and maybe you could speak a little bit about that because it's a really significant part of the film.
Thank you for asking. Yes, the costumes. I guess the ones that had the most thought put into were the ones in the primary colors that the four Eurasian men are wearing, and you would see that they have kind of this European sleeves and um, silhouettes, and that they were actually directly inspired by a folk costume that the Eurasians use for traditional dance. And it's actually a mishmash of different things that come. For example, sometimes they wear cowboy hats, and that's completely from somewhere else. And then they mix Portuguese with like British, different dress as part of the costume. So again, it's this idea of like different things being put. So we chose to do them in a single solid color, just to bring attention to the silhouette, and kind of like abstract them a little.
Thank you. So I think in Kalsubai, there's also this exploration of Kalsu as this woman who resisted kind of the idea of gender roles that we understand today, and people have understood. So I wondered if you could talk a bit about that and why you decided to focus on her specifically, and her relationship to the women in the village.
uh, See, when I went to that village, one thing is that this film was made in a place which is not my mother tongue. So, though I'm an Indian, but in India, you have so many culture and language that the language in which this film is made, it's not the language I speak, neither do I understand. So, for me, it is almost like encountering a foreign space, a foreign culture. Uh, so when I went to the village after traveling, I didn't have a film in mind exactly what I wanted to do. I was thinking that I want to shoot these people, these landscapes. But then when I was talking to the people, especially the women who really greeted me very warmly, okay, so the women were the first people who were very welcoming, and so I met friends with them, and I realized that this Kalsubai deity that has the film is made on, which the women look up to this deity not as like a goddess. They are the Kalsuba is more like their daughter or their mother. I mean, when they refer to Kalsuba, it seems that they are referring to someone of their family. It never felt that they're referring to a deity. This is something that really interested me and fascinated me, because generally in religion we have an element of fear that we associate with goddess or deities, but with Kalsuba there was no such fear. Even when there was fear, like there were cases where people used to say that if you do this, Mother Kalsubai will get angry. They refer to is almost like she would scold them like a mother would do to their children, not like an omniscient power or something like that. So that really motivated me, and I realized that this story of a tribal girl, and I felt that more than mythology, maybe it's really something like this happened, of a young tribal girl who must have kind of stood up against the patriarchal regime, and then I don't know what happened to her actually. That story of with ages has been appropriated as a story of a goddess. It's a very common thing in India. So for me, these women were actually, by harboring the idea of Kalsuba inside them, what they were doing is, in their own way, they were trying to rise up against patriarchy. So it was like a feminist take from a tribal point of view. Of course, they do not understand the word feminism, but what they were doing is very close to what we have as a philosophy of feminism today. So I was very fascinated, and I wanted this intimacy to be there in the film, and that's why I have only shot the women of the place, because the way women related to the goddess is very different from the men. When the men were referring to Kalsuba, it was like typically they were referring to a deity, a goddess. There was no personal touch or intimate feeling. But when the women were doing that, I could sense that warmth in their voice. So which kind of really motivated me.
So I have a question from the audience. So with Saudade, could you tell us a bit more about the traditional Portuguese connections that you reference in the film? Yeah, for those of us who don't know the context.
Yeah. So the film opens up with a dance, and it's a traditional Jinklinona dance, which was something that um, uh, the people the it was something that was brought over from the Portuguese back in the day and has been adopted into our culture. Can you help me out with?
I mean, historically, how the Portuguese got to Southeast Asia was first they were in Goa in India as missionaries, right? And then they came to Malacca and to Singapore. So that was the first kind of like the first generation of Eurasians that were born from that Portuguese connection. And until now, so the whole film is done in Kristang.
Yeah, yeah. So Kristang is
A
a Creole of Portuguese and Malay language. It's the first language my mom knew growing up. English would be her second language, and it's a language that it's not spoken anymore. I can't speak it anymore. In Singapore, there's a movement to start it up again, but it's become very like academic and not a language that people use. And the only community that speak it now is this small community in Malacca, where the Portuguese first settled, the Portuguese settlement. And there's only one scene in the film where you actually see the words of Kristang leave the lips from a human being, and that's in the scene with the fisherman and the maiden. And it was really important for me to have at least one scene where you see the lips. The whole film is done over voiceover, but it was important to have one scene to see actually leave the lips, that a glimmer of that this language is still alive, and so that these people are still alive. And so I got these I managed to bring two local Portuguese Malaccan Portuguese to Singapore and actually film them. They're not professional actors, but I was not really interested in the performance, but I was really interested to actually document these words come out from people's lips. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. So I think we don't have that much time left, but I wanted to thank you all for your contributions to these amazing films and to the screening. And yeah, I hope that everyone who's watching at home and who is here has enjoyed them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much.